Canada is about to jump out of the plane. They keep telling us everything is gonna be okay. But unfortunately, our eyes see something completely different. It's actually the opposite. We are heading directly into the floor. In today's report, freedom in this country is at stake, and there's a real estate market that is straight up collapsing. Is this just the beginning? And Mark Carney says that Muslim values are Canadian values. Our fears are becoming a reality. Everything is going to be uncovered in this report. Let's go.
And the message of Eid resonates in this room, across this city, and I may say it should resonate with all Canadians. It's a story that some of us hear with slightly different nomenclature, whether the prophet is called Ibrahim or Abraham, Ishmael or Isaac. The lessons and values of Eid are the same. Canada, our Canada is a diverse country, proud home to different languages, different beliefs, different cultures. Those are differences that make us unique and make us strong. We can pray differently, we can gather in different places of worship, but all of us come together, all of us must come together around the values of Eid. The values of community, of generosity, and yes, of sacrifice. These are Muslim values. These are Canadian values.
I think the most insane part about this entire thing is this. 5.7 million views, and that's just one post. It was shared. Oh, it's like probably at 10 million views. Why would it be at 10 million views? It's because of things like this. And I don't think I could read this report, but you could understand that 9 years old. See, when the problem is that there are also some other things that you have to consider when you start saying things like that. Plus, what about all of the other religions? He only talked about one. There's another issue. And I mean, the thing is, and it's not me, it's the public. The public sees on a weekly basis issues in all the major cities in Canada on a weekly basis. This is a touchy subject. So for him to come out and do what he just did, well, no wonder it's at probably 10 million views. Canadians are furious right now. So I went through the comment section. I wanted to show a couple, but I'm sorry, I can't show you any. The only thing I can show you is this is, in a nutshell, this is what Canadians are thinking about this whole thing.
Steel company, how much steel are you using these days, Todd? I mean,
we just heard Mark Carney. First, he tells us Canada doesn't use any steel. Now, Jolie says Canadians need to use more steel, more Canadian steel. Here's a thought. Maybe they should remove the industrial carbon tax that they put on our steel and aluminum. Yeah, if our government cared, they would remove it immediately. Let's see, Melanie Jolie.
We need to make sure that we buy Canadian steel. We need to make sure that we buy Canadian aluminum, and that's why the legislation that was tabled today to fast-track major projects is important, because to your point, there is urgency, and we need to make sure that we act very speedily.
If I was working in the steel or aluminum business, I would be brushing up my resume right now. And for all of you out there saying that Canadian steel is competitive, and we don't charge that industrial carbon pricing system on our steel, well, let's hear from Mark Carney what he said.
Looming trade war with the United States and the industrial carbon tax in place I'm wondering if in your plans to support Canadian industries, you would consider exempting companies from the industrial carbon tax, particularly like ones like Algoma Steel, which are actively working towards having greener technologies in place in the near future.
So what's happening is that there's a couple things here. One is that there's a value to that industrial carbon tax and the predictability of that tax and the certainty around. It encourages the types of investments that help companies such as Algoma leapfrog their competitors, and leapfrog in many cases their American.
If you believe that a industrial carbon tax makes you more competitive, I have a beachfront property in Nunavut to sell you. And we just got some amazing news. It's like, holy crap, BC gives green light to an LNG pipeline with no need to do a new environmental assessment. One was done in 2014, and they're going to accept that one and move forwards with an LNG project out to the coast to Kitimat. But don't get too excited. It comes with a catch. Nothing is a coincidence in life. Look who is an owner of this pipeline, Brookfield. And this is the first pipeline that we've heard since Mark Carney has been elected in charge. This is insane, because if this is the first, this will definitely not be the last. And the elbows up crowd is furious about this information, because whenever you deliver facts that hurt, they don't even say anything except for attack you. They're on full attack mode. They're not even coherent right now. Now let's look at Bill 2. If it passes as written, it will become illegal for any business, profession, or charity to accept cash payment of more than $10,000. There's a lot of people that say, who cares? That's only $10,000. Well, here's the problem. This is where it starts. Then it's 5,000. Then it's 1,000. Then it's digital currency. This is a slippery slope. I want to see the Conservatives and Pierre Poilievre be like, what are you thinking with this bill? We can't have it with this in there. We need to see the Conservatives step up. We can't have this language the way it is. It's a slippery slope, Canada. And while they're prepping us for digital currency under Bill 2, beef, the one that has real nutrients, that's dense and great for your body, Canadian AAA beef, is now a luxury item in this country, the second largest landmass on planet Earth, and we can't afford to eat the beef that is in this country. So how bad is this? You're not going to believe these numbers. Line steaks has increased 34.2% since January of this year. So in 5 months, that's 6% per month. If you annualize that, that's an increase of 82%, almost 100% more by the end of this year. And if you look at top sirloin is up 33.7%. But this trend, I remember buying just 5 years ago, steak was over half price. So it's already up 100%. And now it's increasing by 6% per month. In Canada, we're talking about a crisis. We are not going to be able to afford beef by the end of 2025 if this trend continues. Many of you are probably wondering why it's so expensive. Transportation cost, the carbon tax, the number of licensed beef processors, and labor cost. I'm sorry, Canada, but transportation is tied to carbon taxes. So that's a double whammy from the carbon taxes. And licensed beef processors, that's government issued, I believe. And labor cost. All of these temporary foreign labor, are they not helping out with the beef processing? Where are these people? Labor costs. And get this, Canadian inventory has fallen to the lowest level since 1989 at 3.38 million head. That is it. We're going to look at some more charts here. So this chart covers all the way from 1980 to today, you could see in 2005, we are at like 5.4 million head, and it's basically been cut in half. On top of the carbon taxes and shipping and all that, this is another problem. The feed, it's doubled in price since November of 2020. It was 140. Now it's 280. So in 5 years, the price of feed has doubled. It's all a result of printing way too much money. And now inflation has caused our beef prices to be a luxury item in Canada. And you're not going to believe this story. Who remembers the Arrive can? Oh, geez. Where the guys were doing work in their mama's basement when it should have only cost Canadians $50,000. That is it. And the app didn't even work. Well, get this. They get a slap on the wrist and told, we'll see you in 7 years for your next contract. You can't make any of this stuff up, Canada. I'm actually shocked, super shocked, that CBC is actually reporting on Bill 2. They're not in agreement. They're seeing the same stuff that the public is seeing. However, check out how they spin this thing.
And laws has 16 parts. And I think we need to go beyond the headlines on this bill, because the things that the government says that this bill is about, I don't think most people will find them controversial when it comes to like how you classify drugs, for example, and some of the powers that you're giving authorities to crack down on organized crime. Law enforcement agencies have clearly used this opportunity to sneak things in here that have been vetoed by lawmakers previously in at least 2 or 3 different parliaments, because they were seen as going too far. There are things here that to me make like frankly no sense and are a real dangerous slippery slope, and I worry that there's not enough public scrutiny on it. For example, you can ask like your internet service provider to hand over your information voluntarily, any information they legally hold about you, and the government will protect them from being criminally or civilly sued. They don't have to get a warrant. They can just ask for it. And these are heavily regulated industries, so they would have an incentive to just be like, okay, well, I don't want to cause any problems with the government. It's just filled with little example like that throughout the bill. And you realize what it means when there is no NDP, for example, there to raise the concerns, because some of the things that were raised and were not passed were because of the NDP and the Bloc in previous parliaments.
Yeah, I mean, it is remarkable that those things that Althea is talking about there, Chantal, are conservative. They're conservative ideas, policy ideas that didn't make it through in Stephen Harper's government being brought back here. I mean, you can like them or hate them, but they are stolen or borrowed from a previous conservative government.
Well, I'm told by people who know better than I do that the civil service, as it should, looking at the probability of a conservative government, did draft a few bills, and that they provided the canvas for legislation such as this one. But it is clearly a Trojan horse legislation, and I find that very troubling. Beyond the substance, I totally agree with Althea on the substance. I am troubled by the notion that we have a new government that believes that it should introduce such measures under the guise of reinforcing the border. It speaks to the opposite of transparency, wanting to have debate and get to the best legislation for Canadians. This one infringes on privacy rights in a way that no legislation I've seen before come forward, and it is not even the point of the bill.
No, it does make me wonder too, Andrew, whether what you said was right, whether some of this is something that the U.S. is asking for, and it's an attempt to placate them. But I have no idea if that's true.
It's hard to know where this comes from. It certainly wasn't talked about in any great detail before this. No. You do get the feeling this was sort of on the shelf somewhere because there's a permanent element of the bureaucracy that's always pushing for this kind of thing, particularly the law and order part of it.
Unbelievable. The government that is putting forward this bill is the Liberals. So how are you spinning it to the Conservatives? It makes zero sense. Even if they brought it forth 12 years ago, they try to push something forward. We have our current government, which is the Liberals, trying to put these bills in so they could start monitoring everybody online. Now, let's take a look at some data. This is a troubling data set. This is the city of Toronto condo market. If you look at that arrow, it's basically going straight up. And if you look on the left side, that is not months. That is quarters worth of supply. So we're looking at 2.5 years worth of supply in the condo market in Toronto. Holy crap. The highest it's been ever. And usually the supply, if you look at history, it's right around 6 months or less. We're at 2.5 years of condo supply. Is this the tip of the iceberg for the real estate market in Canada? We have a new Abacus poll. This is where Carney became prime minister. The green line is Carney's approval rating based on this poll. He is currently at 53%. Who are they polling? CBC's lunchroom? I'm not buying any of this. And how fast is this poll? It goes up slowly. Look, it went up like this, slowly up. How fast is that gonna fall within 12 months of not getting any pipeline or any energy project approved in this country? It's gonna fall to zero. I couldn't have said it better than Rebecca Schultz.
You know, I think that's one of the challenges is what does the federal government define as consensus? Our premier is working very closely with premiers across the province to look at places where we can find common ground to get things built and make sure that we are working in the interests of provinces across our country. But of course, you know, like if we want to talk about consensus, there certainly wasn't consensus when the Liberals brought in Bill C-69, Bill C-48, an oil and gas production cap, a clean electricity regulation. So that should be, quite frankly, all the rationale they need to step away from those policies.
Well said. The food professor in Canada explains why our grocery prices are just so freaking expensive in Canada.
Some of the recent inflation data, a lot of it is actually human induced, related to trade policy, not just in Canada, but around the world. And the tone was set by the White House a while ago. I think we all know that. There's a bit of a tariff war going on, and countries are responding to America in different ways, including Canada with counter tariffs. And our belief is that counter tariffs have actually made food more expensive in recent months. Just to give you an idea, the food inflation rate right now is at 3.8%, which is triple of what it was 2 months ago. Wow. In the US, with all the craziness around Trump's policy and tariffs, food inflation has gone down to 2%, which means that the American economy is much more well equipped to absorb geopolitical shocks than we are. We're not as competitive. We don't have that kind of, with the same population density and things like that. So Trump can afford a trade war. You'll never win a trade war. You don't win a trade war, but you can afford a trade war. Whereas in Canada, our margin of error is very, very slim.
So the counter tariffs are making our food prices go up. Elbows up, Canada. I thought this chart was very interesting. Food price inflation in Canada in the last 12 months. Check out the food tax holiday. We actually saw food prices go below zero. They were decreasing. And then as soon as the tax holiday ended, prices continued to soar. Yeah. Maybe they should remove all taxes on something that you eat. It doesn't matter if it's junk food, because most Canadians are buying junk food because they can't afford fresh fruit and vegetables. It's way more expensive. They go for the rotisserie chicken. If you're wondering how to answer questions when Vashi Capello asks you a question about statistics and data, this is how you respond.
Off the ground, then we'll be in the same position that we have been for the last 10 years, watching missed opportunity go by.
I just quickly point out, according to Statistics Canada, for the fourth consecutive year, production of crude oil and equivalent projects reached a record high in 2024, up 4.3% from 2023. I do really quickly want to turn to asking you about.
I just want to say we have an aspiration to double our production, and we could have been at already. probably 6 to 7 to 8 million barrels a day. That's what I'm looking at. And why should we hold ourselves back when we know the world wants our products? This is the time for us to build them.
Yeah, I guess I'm just countering the idea that things are destitute or that nothing is being developed or production is extremely capped. Like, the numbers bear out a different story. They're not perhaps as high as you and other people in the province or maybe even across the country want to see, but they're not going down.
Actually, we've got the lowest living standards in the world. Like, we're falling behind all the OECD countries in productivity growth and standard of living growth. And that's because these are the kind of projects that consistently fail and do not get built. So we can't sugarcoat that. That is a reality. If we want to be a rich country and we want to be able to keep up with our neighbors in growth, we've got to build things. We've got to dig things out of the ground. We've got to get products to market. We can't keep on borrowing and borrowing and borrowing and watching the kind of situation that we've seen over the last 10 years develop. That is not what Albertans want. It's not what Canadians want. And so I think there needs to be a complete attitude adjustment about all of these projects, because we've lost a lot of opportunity across the board, across the country.
Now that's how you respond to a question with stats. You bring the facts, you take down the house. We need to become an energy superpower. Let's go. That's it for today's report. If you made it this far, you are awesome. I could have kept going on and on. There are so many stories, but what I do is I take the absolute top stories and I provide you the truth with receipts. Today's video was a little bit longer because yesterday I missed my report. So this is a double up video. Moving forwards, tomorrow I'll have another report. I like making these videos every single day for all of you. I'll see you on the next report.